So I dropped out because of that. So now I have this like arc of universities. And then yeah, sort of launched the fund. We sort of raised $40 million in Australia. I had seen all these people create things and I was like, oh, I could probably do it as well. So like Arrayah in itself, like we run experiments on how we can live and create better in the future. We'll bring 100 people or up to 100 people together. And there was another thesis that the world's hardest problem to solve for a lack of people, but for a lack of spaces to experiment. Is like you need a co-founder, you need capital, and you need a network, right? And the thesis was we'll de-risk you on all those three things, right? And it was we'll bring 100 people or up to 100 people together into a room who are domain, business, and technology experts.
Oh my God, thank you so much for being here, guys, for another ARC Fireside. Akshat, thank you so much for being here. We've actually only met very recently, so this is super cool.
Yeah.
Today was our first time speaking in person.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, is Jesse in that? Yeah? Jesse was the man that connected us. So it's just like, look at this, right? It's a circle of life, and here we are right together, right? It's like, oh God, it's amazing. But thank you for being here. I know less about you and I know less about Arrayah, but I would love to learn as much as I can now. Let's start with you though. Where are you from?
Yeah, so I was born, thanks for having me. So I was born in a place called Jaipur in India, north of Jaipur, and sort of lived there till I was 6. And then my sort of parents migrated to Australia, Sydney. And this was when like Australia had its like skilled migration open, like borders kind of open. It was like, yeah, come on through. So my parents migrated and sort of I started my life in Australia, in Sydney more specifically. Yeah.
And have you been Sydney the whole time?
Mm-hmm.
What you know, I was in Sydney in like 1990 to 1994 or something. Were you there?
Oh, I don't want to, yeah, no, I wasn't even born there.
Oh, you really? So the answer is no. Simple answer. That was a simple answer, right? Fuck it out. Never mind. I mean, it'd be cool if we just out happening be to be at the same school, you know, like it would have been great, but no.
I was around. I was
Okay, different generations. Jeez, there we are. Okay, no. Yeah, this is normally about the time that I joke about Australian being my first language, and that I could speak Australia until I was 11 or 12. You know, yeah, I don't know. How's your Australian accent? It's not that strong.
It's not that strong. Yeah, I've had to
always do maybe it would come back out. I'd remember and we could talk as well. But anyway, okay. So Sydney. And then what? So where did you start? What was
So it's like every brown kid, like we went to the best school. Let's say parents were like, always the best school in Australia or Sydney, and sort of then went to the best high school, and sort of at the end of high school was like, what do I want to do for university, right? And parents were like, become a lawyer, become a doctor, that's what we knew, or an engineer. And I think this was it was at a time where I was sort of watching How I Met Your Mother.
Great show.
Yeah, great show for anybody. And Ted.
That was my generation, not yours.
No. It seeped into my generation.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. And Ted from that show was an architect, and he said, I want to leave a mark on the world through a building. And at the bottom, it's going to say like architected by Ted Mosby. I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. So I enrolled myself into civil engineering. So I was like, oh, I want to build a building, have like Akshat at the bottom of it, and then peace out, right? And then during university, like it was cool, like education, like university, content, credentials, community. I think it gave me all those three things. But like, I quickly realized that my friends at university were building some really cool things, and I was like tinkering on cool things with them as well. So we created the first maker space in Sydney. I was like, where are all the spaces where people can just build stuff or go to and build stuff, right? And on the back of that, we started a student fund. So we were like, students need funding. We need to like sort of back students early on, because if you can sort of showcase that if you back someone and like, oh, like you've backed me, then they keep going and they create impact, right? And then nobody believed in students then. They're like, nope, we don't know what is this, that we're not going to sort of support you, and etc. And so we then became an education platform for New South Wales students. So Sydney's the New South Wales is a state, around like sort of educating everybody in Australia or New South Wales around entrepreneurship. Like what is entrepreneurship, what it means to be an entrepreneur, and like etc. And on the back of that, a guy reached out and said, hey, I'm starting this thing called Antler. So Antler is an early stage accelerator fund for people who don't know. And this was, I think, 2018. And he was like, yo, we're going to upseed the world. We're going to like sort of be like, we're going to sort of create more companies. We're going to bring people together. We have a new way of sort of building companies, right? And the new way was, if you can sort of break, like right now, in order to build a company, you may agree or disagree, is like you need a co-founder, you need capital, and you need a network, right? And the thesis was we'll de-risk you on all those three things, right? And it was, we'll bring 100 people or up to 100 people together into a room who are domain, business, and technology experts, or sort of had worked in those industries, and they would like talk, mingle for a couple of weeks. They would form teams, would then invest in those teams, and then we were like quite global and we had a network, so we would then help them scale and grow, right? So that was Antler's whole thesis. So I think I was like the 10th employee for them globally, and my parents were like, what are you doing? What is this? And I was like, oh no, it's going to work. Like, this is cool. And then there was also at this point where my university, I'd finished all my courses, and my university engineering requires work placement. So you need to work on like sort of off campus. And they're like, you need to do 9 days of work placement. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't work in an engineering company right now because I'm launching a fund. And they're like, too bad, too sad. So I was like, okay, well, I want to drop out. So I dropped out because of that. So now I have this like arc of universities. And then, yeah, sort of launched the fund. We sort of raised $40 million in Australia. We invested over, sort of worked with them for 4 years, invested in like 100 companies. And that was really cool, right? So the core thesis of like bringing people together, sort of them sort of say, oh, wow, it is possible, right? A lot of these people predominantly came from perhaps corporate backgrounds, people who didn't realize they could start companies, and would just unlock this like huge potential in people being able to create companies, right? At the end of 4 years, it was like we were raising a second fund, and I was like, I like building stuff. As an engineer, I like tinkering on things, building things, and didn't excite me to start another fund and like sort of keep going. So I was like, okay, I can quit this. Or I was like, at this point, I had lost a little bit of faith in Australia. Like in Australia, not a lot of people were like blowing their lives up and taking enormous risk. Because I was like, why are you not like just like taking all this risk and like just building something, right? So I left, and that's when I went to launch the MENA fund. So went to launch the Antler MENA fund, which is the Middle East, North Africa, Pakistan fund. So stayed in Dubai, stayed in Saudi. That's when I met Farhad and a couple of others. And that was fun. So it was like VC, just in a different country. This time we had launched in 26 cities around the world. We had raised a lot of funds. We were like first investors in Lovable. We were like Arrayah first investors. So a lot of people knew us, and it was like, okay, this is cool. And like raising became a bit easier. And I was like, this is the same thing, just in a different country. So after 1 year sort of living in Saudi, like I quit. And that's when I started experimenting on what's next, right? Like I was like, I've done all this like VC, seen what's possible, what people can do.
So just on that, Regan, you were number 10 at Antler, is that right? Yeah. Did you ever get to meet Charlton or anyone from Concentric Capital by any chance?
No.
They're just it's a fund I advise. They did the like seed round of Antler itself, so I expect that they were probably in the room at some point.
I'm sure, like they raised, so we did Singapore was like sort of the first MVP. Like we were like, hey, would this model even work, right? So we gave, and it was an MVP, and I think that's where they raised a bunch of capital then. And then Australia was the second fund globally for them. So
it's done quite well, right, Antler? Right, like it's like got like $1 billion deployed and $6 billion NAV, something like that.
Yeah,
now, right?
Done really well.
It's been a good business, and you've seen that grow, right? Across like, is it across like 30 different territories?
26 cities. 26. And we have, I think, 14 funds. Globally, or 15 funds now. I think they keep like expanding and growing and doing funds of funds and different funds. Yeah,
it's not bad, and you obviously there at a fairly critical time. That's interesting. But okay, you got bored of making money.
Yeah, you could say that. It was like I had seen all these people create things, and I was like, I could probably do it as well. And I think like sort of creation, I was like in this experimentation phase, and like creation requires exposure, right? Like what is possible? So I lived in a bunch of places. I moved to London, lived in Paris, lived in SF. And through these places and through Antler, I realized that like talent is evenly distributed around the world. I don't think talent Like sure, like you could say like it's concentrated in SF, but I don't think you're born smarter in SF. Like I think talent exists all around the world. And there was another thesis that the world's hardest problems are not solved for a lack of people, but for a lack of spaces to experiment, right? So if you can create more spaces in the world for people to come together, then you could start solving some really hard problems. So over that time, we created hacker houses or hacker homes in 7 cities around the world. And it was pretty much where sort of 7 to 10 people lived together for a month, up to 6 months. Different markets was different, sort of did in Dubai, SF, Bangalore, Berlin, New York, Vancouver. And yeah, like there was clearly a need, right? Like there was a bunch of people. We ran cohorts for a month, up to 6 months. And it was really exciting. And towards the end of that, I actually came back to Australia for a mate's wedding. And I was like, this is earlier this year. And then I was like, why did I leave Australia? Like, I feel like I left Australia 2 years ago, and because not anybody was like building stuff, creating stuff. And I think now we're at this precipice of people have normalized creation. Like they're like, oh, I can do this. Like it's better for me to create than not create. Like I shouldn't go down this corporate route because I just can't get rich. Or I just can't create any impact through that, right? And that was a really good like sort of wow, that's awesome. Like this is where my family is and my friends are. So perhaps this is also where the people are or the community is. Perhaps I should give Australia a go. So that's where sort of the next iteration of Arrayah kind of started, right? Which is now not just these homes, but sort of now doing pop-up neighborhoods. So like Arrayah in itself, like we run experiments on how we can live and create better in the future. So the first experiment in Australia was sort of a couple of months ago. We got sort of 40 to 60 people, like around 60 people coming through over the month, up north of 1 hour of Sydney. People lived together, created together, and sort of celebrate life together. People were finishing off sort of novels, writing songs, and then creating startups, right? Or just experimenting more generally. So that was really cool. So that was the most recent, and that's, I guess.
And then, but that's before where we last spoke on the phone, that you're now in the new sort of like neighborhood that you are now sort of moving. So what is Arrayah right now? What are you working at the moment?
So that was a couple of months ago, and from that, so we had sort of 20-30% of that 60 fly in, and the rest sort of very Australians. Australia is generally just not a transient country. Like you don't have a lot, like you never go, oh, I'm going to just go to Australia for a weekend and then come out. It never happens. So a lot of the people in Australia were sort of, when we did this, were Australians. So they were like, oh, this is so cool. This is like, I've gotten exposure to this. I want to keep doing this. So now we've actually moved into more permanent housing. We've got sort of 5 houses, or sort of 4 houses, 5th ones I think being sort of developed. With sort of a lot of these people going able to continue this and living together for a year now or 6 months and locking in leases for that, right? So, and that's done in Sydney now. So we've got this within like maybe 20-30 minutes of public transport of each other. Like there's houses, like 4 or 5 houses. So that's sort of the more permanent structure that I'm seeing. But I want to continue doing experiments, right? Like at the top, like I see cities or like societies as people, infrastructure, and a culture. Like I think I want to experiment with the people and the culture right now. I think infrastructure can evolve over time, right? Like I'm not in a rush to like, oh, let's just set this up or like there's different infrastructure types. Like NSS for example, done apartments, which is really cool, and we did homes. Like, is apartments better than homes for the future of what I want to do, right? I don't know. So I want to experiment with infrastructure, experiment with types of people, and experiment with culture as well.
No, incredible. Like, it's like how many people have come through Arrayah programs so far, would you say?
So with those 7 houses, we had like around 70, 80 people come through sort of the 7 homes. And then sort of more recently, we had like around like 60 people come through, right?
Because I've met a handful of these people, kind of already, right? And they're having like a really good experience, right? This was like actually like quite a formative kind of like experience for them that like, they talk extremely positively about like, what is special about it? What is it you've done that these people sort of like go on and wax lyrically kind of about?
Yeah, well, there's actually a couple here, which is really cool. Like over this like last couple of days, I've just been meeting Arrayah people, and it's like, oh, that's dope. Like I didn't even realize they would be here. And I was actually talking to someone, we should do a Arrayah alumni thing. It's like all these people that like, some people have raised a bunch of money, or like some people have sort of like just done really cool things, right? I think like the magic, I don't know what the magic is, but I think it's more so, I've always seen it as like a grassroots thing, right? There was, I think, like sort of going from a top down approach, like of like, hey, like let's just like rush this, can like somewhat be not great for like, for sort of cohesion and long-termness or longevity or whatever you can call it, right? So we started out really small with these hacker homes, and sort of then experimented with sort of larger sets of people. And we did it really intentionally, right? So Arrayah, the people at Arrayah, it was the things that we looked for in people of Arrayah were sort of kindness, ambitious, high agency, and very intentional, right? And I often think that like things break at scale. Like I think education breaks at scale, governance breaks at scale, healthcare, like a lot of things, just you can't sort of, Australia's population, 27 million people, you can't sort of go, this is one rule for all. Right? And I think like sort of one thing, another interesting fact was like, I think it takes a month for friends to go to family. And that's what we did with Arrayah, right? So like a lot of people one week was like, oh, I don't really know this person. Towards the end of it, I was like, yeah, man, this like, you know, like it felt like family, right? Like, and right now I didn't do an alumni thing because most people just constantly talk to each other, right? They're like, oh, I'll meet up, or I'll grab drinks, or I'll work, co-work, etc.
It's a great expression, right? Friends to family. And it is actually interesting how quickly that can occur if you are sort of like deliberately concierging it, right? It's like typically right now, if you meet someone at a, you know, in the library or at a bar, whatever it is, right? Maybe you see them like a week later, if that, you know, or maybe you see them once a week, right? And it takes you, you know, it can often take you years to get the same depth of relationship with someone that you end up like living in the same building as and spending sort of like a similar kind of like 1 month experience, right? You really actually can accelerate this friends to family without forcing it at any point.
Yeah. And I think you have to be really intentional about it, right? Like it's really important to be super intentional with the people you select. Like the more recent, the sort of the pop-up neighborhood that we did, people were like, actually, like, I don't know if you've done it, but like everybody in my home. So we did sort of, we moved to a town and we got 7 or 8 homes all in the same place. Like sort of 5 to 10 minute walk from each other. And each home was intentionally themed, but the people in the homes didn't know that it was themed. So there was a philosophy house, there was a tech house, there was an impact house, there was an AI house, etc. Right? And people were like, wow, this, like, I'm living in this, like, with 5 to 6 people, it feels like these are the 5 people that I belong with for this month, right? And I think that takes a lot of intentional, like we spent a lot of time initially like vibe checking them and sort of like I think I interviewed everybody or like vibe checked everybody. And then I think a week before I said yes to all these people, because that's how I think, or perhaps that's what I thought people would like connect with each other.
No, again, it's super, and then they owe you for the effort, right? That you've sort of like put into that, right? It's something else we talked about a lot was this like Dunbar's number, and you've already mentioned it on stage here, right? Is this challenges of scaling, these things that work well at like the individual household or like the cul-de-sac sort of like level. And then like, how far does that go? Like, so how are you thinking, because I know that you have ambitions beyond 7 houses. So how are you thinking about sort of like scaling this like extremely deliberate, you know, century planned approach, right? The deliberate serendipity. How do you see that going across a Dunbar of Dunbars? Like how does this sort of like start to work?
Yeah, like something that was like, I've thought about over this last couple of days is there's like, people are creating these like communities or network states and sort of creating their little silo or this pocket of the world, right? Now, how do these pockets talk to each other? Like, how do you sort of get these pockets to talk to each other? And if they're not talking to each other, then you're just having the exact same problem as it is right now, like countries right now. It's like, how do you, right? So I think it's interesting to see, like, right now, sort of Arrayah was sort of focusing on sort of getting to this 150 or sort of looking at around 150 people around a specific vertical, around a specific theme, which is creation, right? I think, so for this top of like funnel residencies or what you want to call them, pop-up neighborhoods, we had sort of people, all types of creators come, like artists, musicians, tech, crypto, etc., right? But then sort of with this more intentional long-term living, we've had to sort of narrow down and say, okay, this is going to be a tech house, right? Because I think you can't have artists or like sort of a painter and a tech bro live together for a year, right? Like I think that there's going to be often clashes in the same house. Like you can have them in the same community, that's fine, but in the same house, and there'll be clashes, right? So I think over time, how I see this is like you will then have Dunbars or 150 of like sort of perhaps these long-term people living together around tech, perhaps, or around music and around artists, and they're all in like sort of the same neighborhood, but it's like they're sort of existing or living together in that little community, right? So that's how I see that.
Interesting. And like, where does that go then? So you think you again, like with Arrayah, where you are, you found sort of actually the place that you were just going to continue sort of like building, right? Or do you think that you're moving it? What's it look like? Yeah, like, you know, I mean, if you go 5 years in the future, what's happening with Arrayah? Yeah, what's success look like?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think there's, people who've been to Australia, there's so much space in Australia. I think Australia has so much space. We only have 27 million people, so we have so much space. I think right now we're still experimenting with like sort of long-term infrastructure, right? Like right now, this like sort of long-term has like sort of has just been a side quest. Like it's like, oh, people are like, I want to keep doing it. It's like, okay, we keep doing it. It's like, okay, let's create this like sort of long-term neighborhood. But I want to experiment with like sort of the water. Like what happens when you live next to the water? What happens when you live in the forest? Or what happens when you live in nature? Or and those are the experiments I want to continue doing. But Australia also, like recently I was talking to someone about this, is Australia has this like, recently I found a site which is like a coal mine, and it's going to get decommissioned in the next 5 years, right? Everybody knows this, and they're selling right now houses for super cheap. I said, perhaps that's a location, right? Like right now, it's sort of still experimenting, but that could be a location, right? So I think there's some really beautiful towns and then sort of places along the coast of Australia, but we haven't sort of finalized that infrastructure piece yet.
But I guess like, yeah, what's the, you know, what would success you think look like in 5 years?
Yeah. So I think having that infrastructure then like sort of set, right? Like I think like it would be close enough. Like I think one thing that I want to look at is like how close is this sort of infrastructure to a major city, right? I think what will happen over time is right now cities are going to become third spaces. Right now we see a third space as like you go to an event or perhaps go to Forma or Edge City and that being the third space. But I think large cities are not going to become third spaces. So it's going to flip. So you will live or for a long time in this neighborhood or village, whatever you call it, and then go to a major city like Sydney and then sort of spend a little bit of time and then come back to your village, right? And I think that's what the next 5 years for Arrayah, or that's what I'm aiming for in the next 5 years for Arrayah, is how do you get sort of that pocket of Dunbar or that pocket in Australia of these people creating things to come to a town close enough from a major city.
Yeah, sure. And so like, can people come and join you now? Have you got spots? Or like, what's the, how do people get involved?
Yeah, so Arrayah.city, so array of R moments, so ARRAYH.city, or Life of the Chat on socials.
That's an array of YAR moments. That's like just brilliant. That's not the derivation of Arrayah, right? Like, what's the meaning of it?
It means ray of hope. And it's a kid's name, so you can just name your kid Arrayah. It means ray of hope.
That's amazing. But they can find you on Twitter. They can come and join.
Yeah.
And if they get through your deliberate fit interviews, they can join a house.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much for being here in Paris to chat about that. I look forward to visiting myself, right?
Thanks, man. Yeah. Pleasure. Thank you.
We became like a feeder school for YC.
We went to Kazakhstan. They gave us the red carpet treatment. Like government, governors, ministers, like president's office. Okay, now we have enough confidence and have enough credibility that we can think about a permanent no. Let's go to the frontier markets. Let's go to countries no one's talking about, and let's like highlight their story, like put them on the map. 0 followers, Twitter account. Took off like a rocket ship. A lot of people started making like 10K, 15K a month, like MRR, quit their jobs, quit school, were working on their ideas full time. The Minister of Digital Development signed an MOU with Solana and basically recognized Solana Economic Zone. Yep, we actually got that offer from Abu Dhabi government to give us $10 million to build P1.